Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto Was the Shadow Monarch. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one. Let's start. Chapter 14, Shadows Unleashed. The Hotaki training ground lay eerily quiet as the Konoha delegation arrived. Ancient trees cast long shadows across the clearing, their darkness seeming to pulse with anticipation as Naruto's awareness spread through them. Tsunade took the central position, flanked by Jiraiya, with Naruto and Gaara positioned slightly behind them. Temari stood further back, her fan ready but unopened. They approach, Gaara stated calmly, his sand stirring slightly in the gourd on his back. Naruto nodded, having already sensed the disturbance in the shadow network extending beyond the clearing. 4 distinct chakra signatures, each powerful enough to create its own gravitational pull on the darkness surrounding them. And a 5th, weaker but still significant, moving unwillingly with the others. Intriguing assortment of energies, the Shadow Monarch observed. The Uchiha carries darkness similar to, yet distinct from, our own. The comment piqued Naruto's interest. What darkness did Itachi Uchiha carry that would register as familiar to the Shadow Monarch? Before he could pursue the thought, 4 figures emerged from the tree line opposite their position. They moved with coordinated precision, black cloaks adorned with red clouds swirling around them as they arranged themselves in a loose line. Between them, they half-dragged a 5th figure, a man with silver hair and distinctive facial markings, bound in chakra-suppressing restraints. Mizuki, Tsunade identified in a low voice, surprise evident in her tone. Former Konoha instructor turned traitor. Last known to be serving a life sentence in maximum security. Naruto's eyes narrowed as he recognized his former academy instructor, the man who had tricked him into stealing the forbidden scroll, hoping to kill Naruto and claim the scroll for himself. The man who had revealed Naruto's status as the Ninetales Jinchuriki that night, intending it as a cruel final revelation before death. Now Mizuki looked broken, physically stronger somehow, but with a vacant, defeated expression that suggested his spirit had been thoroughly crushed. Lady Tsunade, the tallest Akatsuki member greeted, his shark-skin features identifying him as Kisame Hashigaki. So the rumors of Konoha's leadership change are true. Interesting times for the Leaf. State your purpose, Tsunade replied curtly. Akatsuki doesn't request diplomatic meetings without significant motivation. The figure beside Kisame stepped forward slightly, and Naruto felt a cold anger stir within him as he recognized Itachi Uchiha, Sasuke's older brother, and the man responsible for the Uchiha massacre. His Sharingan eyes remained active but showed no signs of shifting to more dangerous forms. We come with information and a demonstration, Itachi stated, his voice unnervingly calm. Recent developments have adjusted certain parameters of our organization's approach. What developments would concern an organization of S-rank criminals enough to prompt diplomatic outreach? Jiraiya challenged. The 3rd figure, shorter, with a hunched posture suggesting age or deformity, spoke in a gravelly voice. Perhaps the emergence of a power outside our existing calculations. A darkness that responds to neither village politics nor typical chakra dynamics. The reference was unmistakable, and Naruto felt Tsunade and Jiraiya subtly shift positions to better protect him if necessary. The Shadow Monarch, however, stirred with interest rather than alarm. The puppet master recognizes our category of power, it noted. Sasori of the Red Sand has encountered shadow manipulation before, though of a cruder sort than ours. The 4th Akatsuki member, a striking blonde with long hair partially covering his face, prodded Mizuki forward. We brought a gift to demonstrate our temporary non-aggression. This one was experimenting with forbidden techniques to increase his strength after escaping confinement. We thought his return might be considered a gesture of goodwill. Mizuki escaped over a month ago, Tsunade noted sharply. Why return him now? Because now is when the conversation became necessary, Itachi replied simply. Certain entities have begun moving that were previously dormant. Alignments shift. Old assumptions require reassessment. The cryptic explanation mirrored the Shadow Monarch's own observations so closely that Naruto felt a chill run down his spine. Whatever was happening extended beyond his personal situation. It was being perceived by multiple powerful entities across the shinobi world. Speak plainly, Tsunade demanded. What entities? What alignments? Instead of answering directly, Itachi turned his gaze toward Naruto. You've begun manifesting abilities beyond standard jinchuriki parameters. Shadow techniques that don't conform to known chakra principles. It wasn't a question but a statement of observed fact. Naruto maintained a neutral expression, either confirming nor denying. Our organization's primary objective involves the collection of tailed beasts, Itachi continued. But recent intelligence suggests complications with two specific jinchuriki, you and the One-Tail's vessel. Gaara remained impassive beside Naruto, though a subtle stirring of sand revealed his heightened attention. Complications? Jiraiya prompted when Itachi paused. The emergence of secondary power sources that interact with but remain distinct from the tailed beasts. The Uchiha elaborated. In the Uzumaki's case, a shadow affinity unlike anything in current shinobi records. In the Shikaku Jinchuriki's case, an evolving connection to sand manipulation that transcends normal dependency on the tailed beast's chakra. The assessment was surprisingly accurate, suggesting Akatsuki had sources of intelligence far beyond typical spy networks. And these complications have caused you to reconsider your approach? Tsunade asked, skepticism evident in her tone. They have necessitated temporary strategic adjustments, Kisame clarified with a sharp-toothed grin. Which is why we're having this civilized conversation instead of a more energetic interaction. They fear what they don't understand, the Shadow Monarch observed. My power represents a variable outside their calculations, as does the One-Tail vessel's evolving control. So you're here to what? Declare a truce? Naruto spoke up for the first time, his voice colder than usual. Forgive me if I find that hard to believe. Itachi's Sharingan eyes focused on him with unsettling intensity. Not a truce. A postponement. And an exchange of limited intelligence regarding emerging threats that concern both our interests. What threats? Temari asked sharply from her position behind the main group. The fourth Akatsuki member, the blonde, smiled faintly. The rulers stir from dormancy, yeah? First movement in millennia, according to our sources. The statement hit Naruto like a physical blow. The rulers, the fragments of brilliant light that the Shadow Monarch had mentioned only in passing, the ancient enemies against which the monarchs had fought since the dawn of creation. So it begins, the Shadow Monarch whispered, its presence surging with sudden intensity. Sooner than anticipated, but not unexpected. The fragments of brilliant light seek to finish what they started. I see the shadow user recognizes the name, Sasori observed, his eyes fixed on Naruto's momentary reaction. Interesting. The connection is more developed than we estimated. Tsunade glanced sideways at Naruto, confusion and concern evident in her expression. What are they talking about? Before Naruto could formulate a response, Itachi continued. Our organization's leadership has received intelligence regarding cosmic-level chakra disturbances. Ancient entities stirring after long periods of dormancy. The timing correlates with the emergence of the Uzumaki's shadow abilities and certain other anomalies across the elemental nations. You expect us to believe Akatsuki is concerned with cosmic-level threats? Jiraiya scoffed. Your organization hunts jinchuriki for their tailed beasts. Since when do you care about broader existential issues? Since the collection of tailed beasts serves a specific purpose, Itachi replied calmly. One that may be compromised by these emerging complications. The exchange was revealing more than perhaps the Akatsuki members intended. Confirmation that their collection of tailed beasts served some larger objective beyond simply accumulating power. The prisoner, Tsunade said abruptly, changing tactics. You said he was experimenting with forbidden techniques. What kind? The blonde Akatsuki member prodded Mizuki forward again. Tell them what you were doing, yeah? Mizuki raised his head, his eyes vacant but voice surprisingly coherent. Summoning rituals. Ancient ones from scrolls I stole from the Forbidden Archive during my escape. Attempting to draw power from entities beyond the elemental nations. And what did you contact? Tsunade pressed. A shudder ran through Mizuki's frame. Brilliant, terrible light that promised power but demanded consumption. It would have granted strength beyond imagination, but only if I surrendered myself completely to become its vessel. The rulers seek vessels. The Shadow Monarch hissed, its alarm transmitting directly to Naruto. Fragments of brilliant light reaching for footholds in your realm to facilitate their entry. This is grave news, young successor. Did you accept this entity's offer? Naruto asked sharply, stepping forward despite Tsunade's restraining gesture. Mizuki's eyes focused on Naruto, recognition and hatred momentarily cutting through his vacant state. The demon brat. I would have, yes. Promised the power to crush you and everyone else who looked down on me. But they. He jerked his head toward the Akatsuki members. Interrupted the ritual. Destroyed the summoning array. Captured me. You're welcome. Kisame smirked. Prevented an interdimensional incident. Very responsible of us, wouldn't you say? Despite the sarcastic delivery, Naruto sensed genuine concern beneath the Akatsuki members' affected casualness. Whatever Mizuki had been attempting had alarmed them enough to intervene directly and then bring the information to Konoha. This confirms our worst fears, the Shadow Monarch continued internally to Naruto. At the dawn of time, the Absolute Being, the God who created all, split the light to create the rulers and split the darkness to create the monarchs. I was once a ruler myself, loyal to the Absolute Being, until the others rebelled against our Creator. They killed me when I tried to stop their rebellion, but in death, I discovered the power the Absolute Being had hidden within me. The revelation stunned Naruto. The Shadow Monarch had once been one of these fragments of brilliant light. It now opposed? When I returned from death as the Shadow Monarch, I found the Absolute Being slain by those who were meant to serve him. The rulers had captured the Monarch of Giants, turning the war to their advantage. I allied with the remaining monarchs to avenge our Creator, but was betrayed by the beast and demon monarchs. The rulers spared me, but by then, my desire for vengeance had faded. The monarchs retreated to the gaps between dimensions, making Earth their new battlefield for the coming war. This complex history recontextualized everything Naruto thought he understood about the Shadow Monarch and its purpose. Not merely a dark entity, but one with a tragic past involving betrayal and lost purpose. What exactly are you proposing? Tsunade asked the Akatsuki delegation, pulling Naruto from his internal conversation. A limited intelligence exchange regarding these extra-dimensional entities, Itachi stated. And a temporary suspension of active operations against the Nine-Tails and One-Tailed Jinchuriki while we assess the changing parameters. In exchange for what? Jiraiya demanded. Information, Sasori replied simply. Specifically, regarding the nature and extent of the Uzumaki's shadow abilities and their connection to these emerging cosmic disturbances. It was a bold request, essentially asking Konoha to reveal sensitive intelligence about Naruto's developing powers in exchange for information about a threat they had no independent verification of. Before Tsunade could respond, a disturbance in the shadows at the edge of Naruto's awareness alerted him to approaching figures. Multiple chakra signatures moving with the deliberate stealth of shinobi on a covert mission. Rude operatives, the Shadow Monarch identified. Led by the Bandaged One himself. They observed from the darkness, but with purpose beyond mere surveillance. Naruto stiffened, extending his shadow sense toward the new arrivals. Sure enough, Danzo, Shimura, and at least 6 Root A and BU had positioned themselves in the forest surrounding the clearing, their chakra signatures muted but detectable to his enhanced perception. We have company, he murmured to Tsunade, keeping his voice low. Danzo and Root agents, concealing their presence at the perimeter. Tsunade's expression hardened, but she gave no outward indication of having received this intelligence. We will consider your proposal for information exchange, she told the Akatsuki delegation. But verification of these claims will be necessary before any substantive cooperation. Naturally, Itachi acknowledged. We brought specific scrolls regarding the rulers that may assist with verification. Ancient records from sources predating the hidden village system. As he reached within his cloak, presumably for these scrolls, Naruto sensed a sudden surge of chakra from the direction of Danzo's position. A moment later, multiple senbon laced with what his shadow sense identified as deadly toxin flew from the tree line, not toward the Konoha delegation, but directly at the Akatsuki members. Incoming! Naruto shouted, shadows erupting around him instinctively to form a protective barrier before their group. The Akatsuki members reacted with impressive speed, dodging or deflecting the attack with minimal movement. But the senbon attack was merely the opening salvo. Root operatives emerged from multiple positions, launching a coordinated assault clearly intended to eliminate both the Akatsuki delegation and, Naruto realized with growing fury, potentially anyone who had received their information. What is the meaning of this? Tsunade demanded as Jiraiya moved to defensive position beside her. Her question was answered when Danzo himself stepped from the tree line, flanked by his most elite Root agents. Securing Konoha's interests, he stated coldly. These criminals possess information too dangerous to be broadly shared. The situation will be contained. The implications were clear. Danzo intended to eliminate the Akatsuki members and likely anyone else who had heard their claims about cosmic entities and changing parameters. Whether acting from paranoia, desire for control, or genuine concern about information security, he had unilaterally decided to contain the situation through lethal force. You overstepped, Danzo, Tsunade barked, her chakra flaring with righteous anger. Stand down immediately! But the Root operatives continued their attack, forcing both the Konoha and Akatsuki groups into defensive positions. The clearing erupted into chaotic combat, with Root agents targeting both delegations indiscriminately. As Naruto deflected attacks with shadow barriers, protecting both himself and Gaara, his fury built with each passing second. Danzo had not only undermined Tsunade's authority and endangered an official diplomatic meeting, but he had done so in a way that suggested he considered everyone present, including Konoha's own jinchuriki, as acceptable collateral damage in his quest to control information. The bandaged one fears knowledge outside his control. The Shadow Monarch hissed, its own anger feeding Naruto's growing rage. He would rather destroy than allow power to exist beyond his influence. Just as the rulers destroyed the absolute being for the sin of creating equals. When a particularly vicious attack nearly struck Temari, as she defended their flank, something snapped within Naruto. The controlled, cautious approach he had maintained since the Shadow Monarch's emergence shattered beneath a tide of cold, calculating fury. Enough! He growled, shadows erupting around him in violent waves. Enough! Darkness exploded outward from his position, engulfing the entire clearing in what appeared to be midnight despite the afternoon sun above. Within this shadow domain, Naruto's perception expanded dramatically. He could sense every combatant, every movement, every flicker of chakra with perfect clarity. Shadow domain. He named the technique as it formed, the words coming to him instinctively though he had never used this specific ability before. Within the domain, the root operatives suddenly found their chakra network disrupted, their techniques faltering as shadows infiltrated their pathways. The Akatsuki members, though better able to resist, also appeared momentarily disoriented by the sudden shift in battlefield conditions. Only Tsunade, Jiraiya, Gaara, and Temari remained unaffected, protected by Naruto's conscious exemption from the domain's suppression effect. Danzo, partially constrained but far from helpless, fixed Naruto with a hateful glare. This demonstration merely confirms my assessment. He spat. Power that answers to no village authority cannot be permitted to develop unchecked. You speak of authority, Naruto replied, his voice echoing strangely within the shadow domain. While attempting to assassinate your own Hokage to maintain your personal control of information. Your hypocrisy disgusts me. As he spoke, Naruto extended shadow tendrils toward the nearest root operatives, those who had targeted Temari and continued to launch attacks despite the chakra disruption. The darkness wrapped around them, immobilizing them completely. Shadow binding, he intoned, finding a cold satisfaction in their futile struggles against his technique. Naruto! Tsunade called sharply. Maintain control. We need prisoners for questioning, not corpses. The reminder might have tempered his approach before, but something had fundamentally shifted within Naruto. The constant restraint, the careful moderation of his abilities, the deference to authorities who saw him as either weapon or threat, all of it seemed suddenly hollow in the face of Danzo's treachery. They attacked with lethal intent, he stated coldly, shadows continuing to spread across the clearing. Against their own Hokage and fellow Leaf Shinobi. They've chosen their fate. As a root agent managed to break free enough to launch another poison saban toward Temari, Naruto's patience evaporated completely. Shadow spikes erupted from the ground, impaling the operative through multiple points with lethal precision. Naruto! Jiraiya shouted in alarm, but it was too late. The root agent collapsed, blood pooling beneath him as life faded from his body. Without hesitation, Naruto extended his hand toward the fallen shinobi. Shadow extraction, he commanded, darkness flowing from his palm to engulf the corpse. Arise. The shadows coalesced around the dead operative, drawing something essential from the body, not the soul, which had already departed, but the shadow imprint left behind, the essence of skills and knowledge that would otherwise dissipate with death. From the darkness rose a figure, similar to the fallen root agent but composed entirely of shadow, with glowing purple eyes that fixed instantly on Naruto with absolute loyalty. The shadow soldiers started kneeling before Naruto. The display caused even the Akatsuki members to pause in surprise, while Tsunade and Jiraiya exchanged alarmed glances. Temari, however, showed no shock. She had known of this ability since their conversations during the training month. Secure the other root operatives, Naruto commanded his new shadow soldier. Lethal force authorized against any who continue resistance. As the shadow soldier moved to obey, Danzo's expression contorted with a mixture of fear and rage. You see? He called to Tsunade. This is what I've warned the council about. Power outside our control, creating its own army from our fallen, power you provoked unnecessarily. Tsunade countered sharply, though her concerned gaze remained fixed on Naruto. This situation is of your making, Danzo. More root operatives engaged the shadow soldier, clearly recognizing the threat it represented. Two more fell to its unnaturally precise attacks, and each time, Naruto extended his hand toward their fallen forms. Arise! He commanded twice more, each utterance bringing forth another shadow soldier from the darkness. The growing cadre of shadow warriors turned the tide decisively, their coordinated attacks overwhelming the remaining root operatives with ruthless efficiency. Fighting with the exact techniques and skills they had possessed in life, but now enhanced by Shadow's unnatural strength, they proved devastating against their former comrades. Naruto approached Danzo directly, shadows swirling around him like a living cloak. "You've manipulated from darkness for decades," he said, his voice unnervingly calm despite the rage powering his techniques. "How fitting that true darkness now judges you." Danzo backed away, preparing hand seals for what appeared to be a powerful wind technique. "You are not Judge Uzumaki. You are an asset of Konoha, subject to its authority structure, an authority you just attempted to assassinate," Naruto countered, shadows lashing forward to disrupt Danzo's hand seals. "Your definition of loyalty seems conveniently flexible." As they clashed, Danzo's decades of experience against Naruto's raw power and shadow techniques, the elder revealed his hidden trump card. Unwrapping the bandages covering his right arm and eye, he exposed a series of implanted Sharingan eyes embedded in the limb, and another in his previously covered eye socket. "Stolen Uchiha eyes," Naruto identified, disgust mingling with his rage. "You lecture about village loyalty while desecrating your own clan members. Sacrifices necessary for Konoha's protection," Danzo retorted, activating one of the eyes. "Unlike your shadow powers, which serve only your personal interests," the accusation ignited something even darker within Naruto. "My personal interests? I endured hatred and isolation my entire life to protect this village as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. I've spent years trying to earn recognition while you operated from the shadows, sacrificing others for your ambitions. No more." Their battle escalated rapidly, with Danzo revealing technique after technique from his arsenal of stolen abilities. Despite his age, the root leader fought with devastating effectiveness, pushing Naruto to draw more deeply on the Shadow Monarch's power with each exchange. "He uses Izanagi," the Shadow Monarch warned as Danzo appeared to negate a lethal shadow strike that should have impaled him. "The Sharingan allows him to temporarily rewrite reality, turning fatal wounds into illusions at the cost of each eye's light." Understanding this ability made Naruto adjust his approach. Rather than seeking an immediately fatal blow, he began systematically forcing Danzo to expend the Sharingan eyes one by one, each reality-altering activation causing an eye to close permanently. Around them, the battle had shifted. The Akatsuki members, apparently deciding that interference in what appeared to be an internal Konoha conflict was unnecessary, had withdrawn to the perimeter of the clearing, observing with evident interest but not engaging directly. Tsunade and Jiraiya had contained several root operatives, while Gaara's sand and Temari's wind techniques protected their position from continuing attacks. As Danzo lost the use of a third implanted eye, his attacks grew more desperate, more vicious, revealing the true nature he normally kept concealed beneath a veneer of patriotic dedication. "You'll never be accepted as Hokage," he spat at Naruto between attacks. "Not with these abomination powers. The village will fear you, reject you, just as they should." The words might once have wounded Naruto deeply, playing into his childhood fears of rejection. Now, they barely registered as anything but tactical distraction. "Bold assumption that I still desire that title," Naruto replied coldly, shadows forming into spear-like projections around him. "Recent events have been educational regarding Konoha's leadership structures." The implication that he might have moved beyond his childhood dream of becoming Hokage visibly alarmed Tsunade, who glanced sharply in his direction despite her ongoing engagement with root operatives. Another root agent fell to Gaara's sand techniques, and Naruto immediately extended his shadow toward the fresh corpse. "Arise!" he commanded again, darkness flowing to claim the fallen shinobi's essence. A fourth shadow soldier formed from the darkness, kneeling briefly before joining the others in combating the remaining root operatives. The efficiency with which these shadow soldiers fought, retaining all the skills and techniques of the shinobi they had been in life, turned the tide decisively against Danzo's forces. Seeing his advantage dissolving, Danzo attempted to create distance, perhaps intending to escape and regroup. "This isn't finished, Uzumaki," he called, activating another Sharingan to avoid a sand coffin from Gaara. "Your power proves the necessity of my approach." "Oh, I think it is finished," Naruto replied, manipulating shadows to cut off Danzo's retreat paths. "But not in the way you imagine." With a series of rapid hand movements, Naruto created a shadow vortex beneath Danzo, a swirling darkness that began to consume the very ground on which the elder stood. As Danzo struggled to escape the technique, Naruto closed the distance between them, shadows extending from his hands in whip-like formations, shadow binding, as darkness wrapped around Danzo's limbs, torso, and finally his head, leaving only his face exposed. No more manipulation from the darkness, Danzo. No more stolen eyes rewriting reality. The shadow tendrils began to tighten, crushing Danzo's limbs with inexorable pressure. The elder's face contorted in pain, but his defiance remained. Kill me, he challenged through gritted teeth. And prove to everyone that you're exactly what I claimed, a monster with power beyond Konoha's control. Naruto! Tsunade called, having subdued the last of her opponents. That's enough. We need him alive for questioning and formal trial. For a long moment, it seemed Naruto might ignore the command, his expression cold and calculating as shadow energy continued to build around the immobilized elder. The shadows tightened further, and a crack of bone was audible as Danzo's left arm gave way under the pressure. Then, with visible effort, Naruto restrained the shadows from delivering a fatal crush. As you wish, Hokage-sama, he acknowledged, though the honorific carried a hint of irony that hadn't been present before. Though I suggest extremely thorough chakra suppression and physical restraints, he's demonstrated his definition of loyalty quite clearly today. As the shadow domain gradually receded, returning natural light to the clearing, the full extent of the confrontation became visible. Several root operatives lay dead, for now transformed into shadow soldiers who stood at attention awaiting Naruto's commands. Others were restrained by various techniques, from Gaara's sand to Tsunade's chakra-suppressing bindings. The Akatsuki members remained at the perimeter, watching with undisguised interest as Konoha's internal power struggle played out before them. Fascinating development, Kisame commented, grinning widely to reveal shark-like teeth. The Nine Tails Jinchuriki creates soldiers from the fallen. Not a technique in any bingo book I've studied. Indeed, Sasori agreed, his gravelly voice carrying across the now quiet clearing. Shadow extraction, an ability not seen in this realm for millennia. The connection to the Shadow Monarch is more advanced than our intelligence suggested. The casual identification of the source of Naruto's power sent a ripple of tension through the Konoha shinobi. That Akatsuki possessed knowledge about the Shadow Monarch, knowledge apparently more detailed than what Konoha itself had gathered, raised disturbing questions about their intelligence sources. Your information regarding these rulers and the ancient conflict has taken on additional credibility given recent demonstrations, Tsunade acknowledged, glancing meaningfully at Naruto. We are prepared to consider limited intelligence exchange, once we've dealt with this internal security breach. Itachi nodded slightly. Understandable. We will withdraw temporarily and return tomorrow at noon for further discussion, assuming this situation has been adequately addressed by then. Shame to miss the rest of the show, the blonde Akatsuki member commented with a smirk. The shadow user was just getting interesting, yeah? Deidara, Itachi reprimanded quietly. We've achieved our primary objective. Further engagement is unnecessary. With that, the four Akatsuki members retreated from the clearing, taking the still-bound Mizuki with them, a reminder that while they had initiated diplomatic contact, they maintained leverage through possession of a Konoha criminal. Once they had departed, Tsunade turned to Naruto, her expression a complex mixture of concern, anger, and calculation. We need to talk about what just happened, she stated flatly. Both Danzo's actions and your response. My shadow soldiers will assist in securing the prisoners, Naruto replied, his tone still unnervingly calm compared to his usual demeanor. They respond only to my commands but will follow your security protocols. That's part of what we need to discuss, Tsunade said carefully. This ability to create servants from the fallen, it raises significant ethical and security questions, less problematic than implanting stolen Sharingan eyes, I would think, Naruto countered, gesturing toward the still-bound Danzo, whose mangled arm hung uselessly at his side. Or attempting to assassinate one's own Hokage to control information flow. One person's crimes don't automatically justify another's actions, Jiraiya interjected, moving closer to study the shadow soldiers with barely concealed concern. These constructs, are they permanent? Yes, Naruto answered bluntly. They persist indefinitely unless disrupted by specific counter-techniques or dismissed by me. They retain all skills and knowledge from life but are bound to serve the Shadow Monarch, or its successor. The clarification did little to ease the tension evident in both Sannin's postures. Whatever trust had been building regarding Naruto's shadow abilities had been severely tested by this display of lethal efficiency and apparent willingness to create what amounted to a personal army from fallen enemies. We should return to the village, Tsunade decided, clearly preferring to continue this discussion in more secure surroundings. Secure Danzo and the surviving root operatives in separate high-security cells. Full chakra suppression protocols. As they prepared to transport the prisoners, Temari approached Naruto, her expression carefully neutral but eyes reflecting complex emotions. That was quite a demonstration, she said quietly. Does it change your perspective? Naruto asked directly, suddenly concerned about how his unrestrained use of shadow abilities might affect her view of him. Temari considered the question seriously before answering. Not fundamentally. I already knew about the extraction technique from our conversations. The scale and efficiency were surprising, but the underlying principle remains the same. She paused, then added more softly. What concerns me more is how quickly you embraced lethal force. The Naruto I've come to know values life, even enemy life. Her observation struck home more effectively than any criticism from Tsunade or Jiraiya could have. Had he changed so noticeably during the confrontation? Had his restraint not just of techniques but of moral boundaries slipped so dramatically? The true monarch cannot afford the luxury of mercy toward those who would destroy the order of realms. The Shadow Monarch commented. You acted as sovereign power should, decisively, without hesitation when justice required it. But Naruto wasn't entirely comfortable with this justification. The cold fury he had felt, the satisfaction in crushing Danzo, these weren't simply tactical responses but emotional ones that had led him to kill without the hesitation he would have shown before. Danzo has been scheming and manipulating for decades, he said finally, sacrificing others for his vision of what Konoha should be. When I saw him willing to kill the Hokage, anyone who might learn something he couldn't control, something broke inside me. Temari nodded, accepting his explanation without completely embracing it. Just be careful that breaks like that don't reshape who you are. Power responds to intent, and intent is shaped by emotional patterns established over time. Each time killing becomes easier, a piece of the person you were changes. It was a surprisingly insightful warning, not a rejection of his actions but a caution about their potential long-term effect on his development. When did you become so wise? Naruto asked, a glimmer of his usual warmth breaking through the cold efficiency that had characterized him during the battle. A small smile curved Temari's lips. Growing up with Gaara required developing a nuanced understanding of power and its relationship to emotion. Some lessons come at high cost. As they rejoined the main group for the return to Konoha, Naruto found Gaara walking beside him, the red-haired jinchuriki unusually thoughtful. Your shadow techniques, Gaara said without preamble. They draw from something beyond the Nine Tails. Yes, Naruto confirmed, seeing no point in denial. An entity called the Shadow Monarch. Different from the tailed beasts, though it can interact with their chakra. Gaara nodded as if this confirmed something he had already suspected. Since your intervention with Shikaku, I've been more sensitive to other presences. Energies that exist alongside but separate from the tailed beasts. The observation aligned with what the Akatsuki members had noted about both jinchuriki developing secondary power sources distinct from their tailed beasts. The Akatsuki mentioned these rulers, Naruto said carefully. Has Shikaku ever referenced such entities? Gaara's expression tightened slightly. Not by that name. But since our connection was rebalanced, he has occasionally mentioned the brilliant fragments, with what appears to be genuine fear. Even in his madness, these entities disturb him profoundly. The information was another data point suggesting the Akatsuki's claims about cosmic disturbances weren't merely fabricated. If Shikaku, a tailed beast of immense power and ancient origin, feared these brilliant fragments, it lent credibility to the Shadow Monarch's warnings about the ruler's threat. As they approached Konoha's gates, Naruto's shadow soldiers carrying the unconscious root operatives while Danzo remained bound by multiple restraint techniques, Tsunade dropped back to walk beside Naruto. Once we've secured the prisoners, I'm calling an emergency council meeting, she informed him. Your presence will be required, as will a full explanation of these shadow abilities, including these soldiers and what exactly this Shadow Monarch entity is. I understand, Naruto acknowledged. And Naruto, Tsunade added, her voice lowering. While Danzo's actions were treasonous and warranted a response, the council will have serious concerns about your display of lethal force and especially these persistent constructs created from fallen shinobi. Prepare accordingly. The warning was clear. While Tsunade might personally understand the justification for his actions, the political fallout would be significant. Creating what amounted to personally loyal soldiers from the dead represented a capacity that would alarm even those who had previously supported him. They fear what they cannot control, the Shadow Monarch observed. As all lesser authorities do when true sovereign power manifests. The rulers reacted similarly when the Absolute Being created us as equals to them. The entities framing, positioning village leadership as lesser authorities, compared to the Shadow Monarch's power, highlighted the fundamental tension developing between Naruto's role as a Konoha shinobi and his emerging position as the Shadow Monarch's successor. As they passed through the gates, drawing startled looks from the guards at the procession of prisoners and shadow constructs, Naruto felt a peculiar sense of clarity descending. The confrontation with Danzo had done more than just remove an immediate threat. It had forced a reckoning with the true implications of his developing powers and their relationship to conventional village structures. Whatever happened in the coming council meeting, whatever diplomatic dance unfolded with Akatsuki, one thing had become crystal clear. The path forward would not follow any previously established pattern in the shinobi world. The Shadow Monarch's successor was emerging more fully with each challenge, and the boundaries between Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf and the Sovereign of Shadows were becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. And as darkness gathered in his wake, forming patterns that stretched far beyond Konoha's walls, the distant light of the rulers pulsed in response. The ancient fragments of brilliant light preparing their own moves in the eternal game of cosmic balance. A game that had begun with the Absolute Being's creation and continued now with new vessels on a new battlefield. The war that had started at the dawn of creation was entering a new phase, and Naruto Uzumaki, jinchuriki of the Nine Tails and successor to the Shadow Monarch, stood at its center, whether he fully understood his role yet or not. Chapter 15 Council of Shadows. The Hokage Tower's council chamber had never felt so oppressive. Ancient wood panels seemed to absorb the light, creating natural shadows that Naruto's heightened senses found both comforting and revealing. Village elders and clan heads filled the semicircular table, their faces displaying varying degrees of alarm, suspicion, and calculation as they regarded the spectacle before them. At the chamber's center stood Naruto, flanked by his 4 shadow soldiers who remained motionless yet unmistakably vigilant. Behind the council table sat Tsunade, her expression carefully neutral despite the tension permeating the room. Jiraiya leaned against the wall near the door, seemingly casual but positioned to intercept any potential threats. "Let us begin," Tsunade announced, bringing the murmured conversations to an immediate halt. "This emergency session addresses 2 critical matters: Danzo Shimura's treasonous actions against Konoha's leadership and the evolving nature of Uzumaki Naruto's abilities." Koharu Yudatane, one of the village elders and Danzo's longtime ally, leaned forward. "Before we proceed, where is Counselor Danzo? He should be present to defend himself against these accusations." "Counselor Danzo is currently in a secure medical cell," Tsunade responded coldly. "Under treatment for multiple broken bones and chakra pathway damage sustained while attempting to assassinate me and sabotage an official diplomatic meeting." The blunt statement sent ripples of shock through those council members not yet briefed on the details. Hayashi Hyuga's Byakugan activated briefly, studying the shadow soldiers with undisguised concern. "These constructs," he said, gesturing toward the shadow figures. "They were once root operatives?" "Yes," Naruto answered directly, his voice steadier and colder than most in the room had ever heard from the normally exuberant shinobi. "They fell in battle after participating in Danzo's treasonous attack. Shadow extraction preserves their skills and knowledge in service to the Shadow Monarch." The clinical description caused visible discomfort among several council members. Shikaku Nara, however, leaned forward with intellectual curiosity overriding his usual lazy demeanor. "This shadow extraction?" he inquired. "It creates permanent constructs from the deceased? Are they conscious? Do they retain memories of their former lives?" "They are conscious but bound to my will," Naruto explained. "They retain all combat knowledge and skills, but their primary loyalty has been redirected to you personally," Hamura Midokado observed sharply. "Not to Konoha." Naruto met the elder's accusatory gaze without flinching. "To the Shadow Monarch's successor, yes. Though my interests and Konoha's have primarily aligned thus far." The careful phrasing, particularly, "thus far," was not lost on anyone present. It carried an implicit warning that this alignment might not be guaranteed forever. "Perhaps," Tsunade interjected, "we should address the immediate issue of Danzo's actions before discussing the broader implications of Naruto's abilities." Jiraiya stepped forward, producing a sealed scroll. "We've completed preliminary interrogation of the surviving root operatives. The findings confirm that Danzo ordered a preemptive strike against both the Akatsuki delegation and our own diplomatic team, with the intention of eliminating all witnesses to the information being shared." "What information could possibly justify such extreme measures?" Inoichi Yamanaka asked, his intelligence background making him particularly attentive to this aspect. "Information regarding entities beyond our realm," Tsunade replied carefully. Ancient powers stirring after millennia of dormancy, entities called rulers or fragments of brilliant light that pose a potential threat to the entire shinobi world. The explanation sounded so fantastical that several council members exchanged skeptical glances. Koharu scoffed openly. And we're basing critical security decisions on the claims of S-rank criminals? Perhaps Danzo was justified in attempting to contain this obvious misinformation. The information aligns with what Ashborn has been sharing with me, Naruto stated flatly. These rulers are ancient enemies of the monarchs, created at the dawn of time by the same godlike entity. They rebelled against their creator, killing him and then hunting the monarchs across multiple realms. The matter-of-fact way Naruto delivered this cosmic-scale history caused stunned silence in the chamber. Even those who had been briefed on his shadow abilities hadn't realized the extent of the cosmic background involved. And who exactly is this Ashborn? Hamura demanded. The Shadow Monarch's true name, Naruto replied. He revealed it to me when we first connected. Before becoming the Shadow Monarch, he was a ruler himself, one who saw the flaws in their crusade and chose a different path. You expect us to believe this mythology? Hamura pressed. That you are the successor to some primordial shadow entity involved in a war among gods? Whether you believe it is irrelevant to its truth. Naruto replied with a coldness that startled many who knew him. The Shadow Monarch's power speaks for itself. As do these soldiers. At his subtle gesture, the 4 shadow soldiers moved in perfect unison, demonstrating a brief but impressive display of coordinated techniques that showcased their retained combat abilities. The display was not threatening but clearly calculated to remove any doubt about their effectiveness as warriors, regardless of the metaphysical background. Tsunade cut in. The fact remains that Danzo attempted to assassinate Konoha's leadership during an official diplomatic engagement. That alone constitutes high treason, punishable by execution under our laws, and the discovery of multiple implanted Sharingan eyes, Jiraiya added grimly, raises serious questions about his involvement in unsanctioned operations against the Uchiha clan beyond what was previously known. This information shifted the conversation noticeably. While some council members might have been willing to debate the appropriateness of Naruto's shadow techniques, few could defend the desecration of clan members' bodies for personal power gain, especially with Heishi Hyuga present as a reminder of how closely all clans guarded their bloodline abilities. If I may, Shikaku Nara said, redirecting the discussion with his characteristic strategic focus. We're conflating several issues that should be addressed separately. First is Danzo's treason, which appears well evidenced and falls under existing law. Second is the nature and regulation of Naruto's evolving abilities, which presents novel questions for village governance. Third is the credibility of these claims about cosmic entities and how Konoha should respond if they prove accurate. The logical partitioning of the issues brought nods from several council members, grateful for the Nara clan head's clarity. On the first matter, Tsunade said, I propose formal charges of high treason against Danzo Shimura, with his case to be tried before this council once his medical condition stabilizes. And his root organization? Heishi Hyuga inquired. Disbanded immediately, Tsunade stated firmly. All members to be debriefed and evaluated for potential reintegration into standard ANBU or other shinobi roles, depending on psychological assessment. These proposals passed with surprising ease. Even Danzo's traditional allies recognized the indefensibility of his direct attack on the Hokage. The discovery of stolen Sharingan had also undermined his credibility significantly, raising questions about what other unauthorized operations he might have conducted over the decades. Now, regarding Uzumaki Naruto's abilities, Tsunade continued, turning to the more contentious issue. Before we proceed, Naruto interrupted, his tone making it clear this was not a request. I believe certain facts should be established clearly. The shadow techniques I command are not merely advanced chakra manipulation but manifestations of the Shadow Monarch's power working through me as its chosen successor. This entity exists parallel to but distinct from the Nine Tails sealed within me. The distinction was important. Separating his shadow abilities from his status as jinchuriki created a separate category that couldn't be addressed through existing protocols for tailed beast containment. And what exactly does being this Shadow Monarch's successor entail? Koharu asked sharply. What are your obligations to this entity versus your obligations to Konoha? It was the central question that had been simmering beneath all discussions of Naruto's evolving powers, where his ultimate loyalty would lie when fully empowered as the Shadow Monarch's successor. Tell them the truth, Ashborn advised internally. Not to pacify but to establish boundaries. A true sovereign does not apologize for power rightfully wielded. Naruto took a measured breath before responding. The Shadow Monarch's primary purpose is maintaining balance between realms, preventing entities like the rulers from dominating and consuming worlds. As successor, I inherit that responsibility alongside the power necessary to fulfill it. And how does this responsibility align with your duties as a Konoha shinobi? Hamura pressed. They are compatible so long as Konoha does not interfere with my role in maintaining this broader balance. Naruto replied with a directness that caused several council members to stiffen. My loyalty to the village remains, but it cannot supersede cosmic obligations that affect the survival of entire realms, including this one. The statement was effectively a declaration of conditional allegiance, a radical departure from the absolute village loyalty traditionally expected of shinobi. Coming from an ordinary genin, such a statement would be dismissible as adolescent arrogance. Coming from the Ninetales Jinchuriki who had just demonstrated the ability to create loyal soldiers from fallen enemies, it carried significantly more weight. These rulers you speak of, Shikaka interjected thoughtfully. You said they're stirring again. What exactly does that mean for our world? It means they seek to return, Naruto explained. Unlike the monarchs, the rulers lack organic form. They have mana-based biology that prevents them from directly crossing into our world without suitable vessels. Humans who willingly or unwittingly open themselves to possession. This new information caused visible concern among the council members, particularly those with intelligence backgrounds. Are you suggesting these cosmic entities require human hosts? Inoichi asked, immediately grasping the implications. Like jinchuriki for tailed beasts, similar but distinct, Naruto clarified. The rulers don't merely seal their power within a human container, they gradually transform and consume the vessel entirely, using it as an anchor point to fully manifest in our realm. And you believe this is happening now? Tsunade pressed, her medical mind immediately considering the physiological implications. Ashborn believes several vessels are already being prepared, Naruto confirmed. Though the process requires specific individuals with compatible spiritual energy signatures, not just anyone can serve as a vessel. The practical threat of cosmic entities using human vessels to infiltrate their world transformed what might have been dismissed as abstract mythology into a concrete security concern, one that the council would need to address regardless of their skepticism about its origins. That position is fundamentally incompatible with Konoha's command structure, Kohara stated flatly, returning to the earlier question of loyalty. No shinobi can serve two masters, especially when one master claims authority transcending village governance. I'm not suggesting dual service, Naruto corrected, his voice remaining calm despite the growing tension. I'm clarifying that my role as Shadow Monarch's successor exists on a different scale than village politics. When they align, as they typically should given our shared interest in this world's protection, no conflict exists. Should they ever diverge on matters of cosmic significance, I would be compelled to prioritize the greater balance. This is precisely the concern Danzo raised about your powers, Hamura observed. Though his methods were inexcusable, his core assessment appears accurate. You represent power beyond village control. Tsunade intervened before the confrontation could escalate further. Let's be practical rather than theoretical. Thus far, Naruto's actions have protected Konoha's interests, including defending its Hokage against treasonous attack. His shadow abilities, while unconventional, have proven valuable assets to village security, assets that could become liabilities should his priorities shift. Hayashi noted, though his tone was analytical rather than accusatory. The same could be said of any powerful shinobi. Jiraiya countered from his position near the wall. The difference is merely scale, not principle. Shikaku Nara tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. What limitations exist on these shadow abilities? Particularly this shadow extraction technique that creates these soldiers. It can only be performed on the deceased, Naruto explained. It preserves the shadow essence that would otherwise dissipate after death, skills, knowledge, techniques. It cannot extract from the living, nor can it recall the actual soul once it has departed. And how many such shadow soldiers could you theoretically create and maintain? Inoichi asked, the intelligence specialist clearly calculating potential security implications. Naruto glanced briefly at his existing shadow soldiers before answering. There is no fixed numerical limit. Each requires a portion of my attention and chakra to maintain, but that cost is minimal once the initial extraction is complete. The implication that Naruto could potentially create an entire army of shadow soldiers given sufficient fallen combatants sent a visible chill through several council members. Then what's to prevent you from raising an army answerable only to yourself? Kohara demanded. What check exists on this power? My own ethical boundaries, Naruto replied simply. And Ashborn's guidance on appropriate use of sovereign power. Ethics and guidance are internal constraints, Amira objected. Konoha requires external safeguards on abilities of this magnitude. Naruto's expression hardened slightly. With respect, Elder, the very nature of the Shadow Monarch's power precludes external constraint. It exists specifically to operate beyond conventional authorities when cosmic balance requires intervention. Before the elders could respond to this unprecedented rejection of village authority, a subtle disturbance at the chamber doors drew everyone's attention. An ANBU operative knelt before Tsunade, delivering an urgent message in hushed tones. The Hokage's expression shifted from annoyance at the interruption to grave concern. The Sand siblings request immediate entry to this meeting, she announced, surprising the council. Apparently, Gaara has information directly relevant to our discussion of these rulers. After a brief debate, the council approved their entry. The three Sand ninja entered with formal dignity, though Naruto immediately noticed the unusual tension in Temari's posture and the uncharacteristic alertness in Gaara's eyes. Forgive the interruption, Temari began with diplomatic precision. But Gaara has experienced something that couldn't wait. All eyes turned to the red-haired jinchuriki, who stood with arms crossed, his gourd of sand seeming to shift subtly despite the absence of any physical movement. Since the restructuring of my connection with Shikaku, Gaara stated in his characteristic monotone, I have experienced increased sensitivity to certain presences beyond conventional chakra signatures. Approximately 30 minutes ago, I detected a massive disturbance in this energy pattern, centered northwest of Konoha. What kind of disturbance? Tsunade pressed. Brilliant light attempting to manifest through a human vessel. Gaara replied, his eyes meeting Naruto's with shared understanding. Similar to what the prisoner Mizuki described, but on a much larger scale. Shikaku became immediately agitated, insisting that the brilliant destroyers are breaching the barrier. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Just as the council debated the credibility of threats from cosmic entities, one appeared to be manifesting near Konoha. The rulers moved more quickly than anticipated. Ashborn commented internally to Naruto, its tone both concerned and grimly vindicated. They sense your emerging power and seek to eliminate you before your full ascension. Can you pinpoint the location? Jiraiya asked Gaara, immediately focusing on practical response. Approximately 20 kilometers northwest, Gaara confirmed. Near what Shikaku identifies as an ancient power nexus, a location where the boundary between realms naturally thins. The information aligned with what the Akatsuki delegation had attempted to share before Danzo's intervention, that certain cosmic entities were seeking entry points into their world through human vessels and natural weak points in the dimensional barriers. This council meeting must be adjourned, Tsunade decided immediately. We need to investigate this disturbance and determine if it represents an immediate threat to Konoha, and if it does? Kohara challenged. What authority structure will apply to our response? Who commands in a situation involving these supposed cosmic entities? The question highlighted the unresolved tension regarding Naruto's status and authority. Before Tsunade could navigate this political minefield, Naruto stepped forward, his shadow soldiers moving in perfect unison behind him. I will investigate this disturbance, he stated, not as offer but as decision. If it confirms the presence of a ruler attempting manifestation, I will take necessary action as the Shadow Monarch's successor. Those who wish to assist are welcome. Those who prefer to await more conventional threats may remain within village boundaries. The declaration effectively bypassed the entire debate about command structure by simply asserting his intention to act regardless of council approval. It was a bold stance that would have been unthinkable from the Naruto of even a few months ago. This is precisely the problem, Amira objected. Unilateral action without proper authorization through village command channels. With respect, Elder, Naruto replied with cold precision. If a ruler is indeed manifesting, conventional authorization processes become irrelevant. The threat operates on a scale beyond village politics, requiring response from equivalent power. Before the argument could escalate further, Tsunade intervened with the pragmatism that characterized her leadership. As Hokage, I am authorizing an investigative team led jointly by myself and Jiraiya, with Naruto, Gaara, and selected Jonin as squad members. This maintains formal command structure while utilizing our most relevant assets for this specific threat. It was a diplomatic compromise that allowed Naruto to participate under nominal village authority while acknowledging the unique relevance of his abilities to the situation. Whether this structure would hold an actual confrontation with cosmic entities remained to be seen, but it prevented immediate institutional deadlock. I accept this arrangement, Naruto agreed, though his tone suggested cooperation rather than subordination. The council will reconvene upon our return with findings, Tsunade declared, effectively ending the session despite obvious dissatisfaction from several members. As they exited the council chamber, Naruto found Temari falling into step beside him, her brothers following closely behind. That was assertive, she observed quietly, referring to his stance before the council. You've changed since the clearing. Danzo's attack clarified certain realities, Naruto replied, keeping his voice low. The village leadership structure has inherent limitations when confronting powers beyond their understanding. Continued pretense of complete subordination serves neither their interests nor mine. The clinical calculation in his assessment surprised even himself. Where had the impulsive, emotion-driven Naruto gone? Had the confrontation with Danzo truly transformed him so fundamentally, or was Ashborn's influence reshaping his personality more dramatically than he'd realized? Just be careful, Temari cautioned, genuine concern evident beneath her practical exterior. Asserting independence from authority structures is necessary sometimes, but complete detachment from them isolates you from the human connections that keep power grounded in something beyond itself. Her insight struck deeper than she could know. Ashborn, for all his power and cosmic significance, had spent millennia in essential isolation since his betrayal by his fellow rulers and the other monarchs. Was that the fate awaiting Naruto as he ascended to his successor? Your wisdom continues to impress me, he acknowledged, some warmth returning to his voice. I'm grateful you're here for this. Where else would I be when cosmic entities threaten to invade? She replied with a hint of her characteristic dry humor. This sort of existential crisis makes our political asylum issues seem rather mundane by comparison. As they joined Tsunade, Jiraiya, and the selected Jonin at Konoha's gates, Ashborn stirred with growing awareness of what awaited them. The breach is more advanced than Gaara realizes, he warned Naruto. What manifests is not merely a fragment seeking a vessel, but a ruler attempting direct entry, a being that once stood among the Absolute Being's first creations. If fully manifested, its power would dwarf even the Nine Tails. The gravity of this warning hardened Naruto's resolve. Whatever institutional tensions existed with Konoha's leadership, they paled compared to the threat of a fully manifested ruler unleashed upon the world. As they departed toward the disturbance, Naruto's shadow soldiers moved in precise formation around him, their presence a visible reminder of the power he now commanded, power that would soon be tested against entities from beyond the boundaries of their world, in a conflict rooted in the dawn of creation itself. And somewhere in the distance, brilliant light tore at the fabric between realms, seeking entry to a world that had abandoned millennia ago, drawn by the reemergence of its ancient adversary in a new vessel. The game of cosmic balance accelerated toward a confrontation not seen since the death of the Absolute Being, with Naruto Uzumaki standing at its center, no longer merely a Konoha shinobi with unusual abilities, but the emerging sovereign of shadows in a war between primordial forces. Chapter 16. Light's Breach. The forest northwest of Konoha grew progressively more distorted as they approached the disturbance Gaara had sensed. Trees bent at unnatural angles, their shadows stretching incorrectly relative to the sun's position. Wildlife had fled the area entirely, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the sound of the investigation team's movement through the underbrush. We're getting close, Gaara stated, his normally impassive face showing subtle signs of strain. Shikaka grows increasingly agitated. The boundary between realms thins with each passing minute. Naruto nodded, his own senses overwhelmed by the shadow disruptions permeating the area. Normal darkness twisted and writhed as if in pain, responding to a force antagonistic to its very nature. A ruler's manifestation distorts all natural balances, Ashborn explained. Light and darkness, life and death, order and chaos, all shift toward unnatural brilliance as the fragment attempts to establish dominance. There, Kakashi said suddenly, his Sharingan exposed and fixed on a point ahead. Approximately 500 meters. Some kind of structure has appeared that wasn't in our geographical records. Through the distorted trees, they could now make out what appeared to be ruins of an ancient temple, except the stonework looked impossibly pristine despite being clearly ancient in design. White marble columns rose toward a domed ceiling partially collapsed yet somehow still standing in defiance of structural logic. Around the temple, reality itself seemed to waver, like heat distortion but more fundamentally wrong. This wasn't here before, Tsunade stated with certainty. I've personally surveyed every square kilometer of Fire Country's territory. This structure has manifested recently. Not manifested, Naruto corrected, drawing on Ashborn's knowledge. Revealed. This is an anchor point, a structure built during the first war between monarchs and rulers that existed beyond conventional perception until now. How do you know this? Tsunade questioned, her scientific mind seeking verification. Ashborn recognizes its architecture, Naruto explained. These were constructed at nexus points where the boundaries between realms naturally thin. They serve as potential gateways for entities from beyond to enter our world. As they approached cautiously, the distortion intensified. Colors became unnaturally vivid, then muted, then shifted through spectrums that had no names in human language. The air itself felt thick with potential energy, pressing against their skin like invisible static. I'm detecting at least 3 chakra signatures inside, Niji Hyuga reported, his Byakugan activated. But something's wrong. They're human in form, but their chakra networks are being consumed by something I can't properly visualize. It's like watching someone burn from the inside with light too bright for even the Byakugan to process. Vessels in the final stages of possession, Ashborn identified grimly. Humans who willingly open themselves to a ruler's essence, now being consumed as the entity uses their physical form to anchor itself in this realm. Can they be saved? Naruto asked internally. No. Once the consumption reaches this stage, the original human consciousness has already been destroyed. Only the shell remains, being reshaped to accommodate the ruler's essence. The brutal assessment wasn't what Naruto wanted to hear, but he appreciated the clarity. If rescue was impossible, their approach needed to prioritize containment and prevention of full manifestation. We need a perimeter, Tsunade ordered, immediately establishing command structure. Kakashi, Guy, secure the eastern approach. Niji, maintain Byakugan surveillance from the southern vantage point. Jiraiya and I will approach from the west. Naruto, Gaara, and the Sand siblings hold position here until we assess the immediate threat level. Naruto exchanged glances with Temari, both recognizing that Tsunade was deliberately keeping the jinchuriki in reserve, either as precaution against their powers or to protect them from whatever was manifesting inside the temple. Either way, it was a conventional tactical approach to an unconventional situation. The Hokage's strategy would be sound against normal threats, Ashborn observed. But a manifesting ruler cannot be countered through conventional containment. Every moment strengthens its connection to this realm. Before Naruto could decide whether to follow Tsunade's orders or assert his unique role in this situation, the decision was made for him. A blinding pillar of light erupted from the temple's dome, shooting skyward with such intensity that everyone instinctively shielded their eyes. The shockwave that followed knocked several team members off their feet, and the ambient temperature rose dramatically in seconds. When they could see again, the temple had transformed. What had been partial ruins now stood fully restored, glowing with internal light that pulsed like a massive heartbeat. The surrounding forest had been scoured in a perfect circle, leaving nothing but crystallized earth that cracked beneath their feet like glass. Direct approach compromised, Tsunade amended immediately, her tactical flexibility one of her greatest strengths as a leader. New formation. Jiraiya, prepare containment seals. Everyone else, defensive perimeter at maximum safe distance. Naruto, Gaara, any insight from your respective entities would be valuable now. The acknowledgement of their unique connection to cosmic forces represented a significant shift in Tsunade's approach, recognizing that conventional shinobi tactics might be insufficient against what they faced. Gaara closed his eyes briefly, communing with Shikaku in the more balanced relationship they now shared. The One-Tail recognizes this manifestation, he reported, his voice tighter than usual. A fragment of brilliant light, what you call a ruler, named Xerxes. I'll just give it a random name. Among the first to rebel against their creator, specializing in purification through consumption. The specificity of this identification surprised even Naruto. How does Shikaku know this particular entity? The tailed beasts are fragments of the 10 tails, Gaara explained, which itself was connected to the primordial conflicts. They retain ancestral memories of these ancient adversaries. Xerxes was indeed among the first rebels, Ashborn confirmed internally to Naruto. Particularly zealous in hunting monarchs after the absolute being's fall. His manifestation here is deliberate, a calculated first strike against you before your full ascension. As if in response to their discussion, the temple doors swung open. Blinding light poured forth, forcing everyone to shield their eyes again. From within this brilliance emerged 3 figures, human in basic shape but wrong in fundamental ways. Their skin gleamed like polished metal, eyes replaced by orbs of pure white light, movements unnaturally fluid as if partially unbound from physical limitations. Greetings, inheritors of the fallen world. The central figure spoke, its voice layering multiple tones that created painful harmonics in the air itself. Your realm has forgotten us, but we have never forgotten you. Identify yourself and your purpose here, Tsunade demanded, maintaining admirable composure despite the otherworldly presence before her. The luminous figure tilted its head at an angle no human neck should permit. I am Xerxes, curator of purity, fragment of the brilliant light. I come to cleanse what has been corrupted by darkness, its glowing gaze fixed directly on Naruto. Particularly the abomination who would succeed the traitor Ashborn. The direct address confirmed Ashborn's assessment. This manifestation was specifically targeting Naruto as the Shadow Monarch's successor. The name, Ashborn, spoken aloud made several of the Konoha shinobi glance at Naruto, connecting this entity's words with what he had revealed in the council chamber. My original name, Ashborn explained swiftly. Before I became the Shadow Monarch, when I was still a ruler myself. Xerxes was once my brother in light, before the rebellion. This additional context painted an even more complex picture of the cosmic conflict Naruto had been drawn into, not merely a war between primal forces, but one tainted by personal betrayal and ancient grudges. You're trespassing in our world, Jiraiya stated firmly, preparing a complex sealing formula. Whatever cosmic grievances you carry, they don't justify invasion of our realm, your realm. Xerxes echoed with something like amusement in its harmonized voice. How charmingly territorial. This world existed long before human civilizations, little sage. We walked here when your kind were still learning to harness fire. The casual dismissal of human authority reflected the cosmic arrogance Naruto had come to associate with entities of this scale. To Xerxes, human governments and villages were meaningless constructs, irrelevant to the larger patterns of creation. Your purpose here is what, exactly? Naruto asked directly, stepping forward despite Tsunade's warning gesture. To purify me as Shadow Monarch's successor? Or does your agenda extend beyond that? The luminous being seemed pleased by the direct confrontation. The successor understands his significance. Good. My purpose is threefold: to eliminate the shadow corruption before it fully manifests in you, to establish a proper bridgehead in this realm for my brethren, and to begin the long overdue purification of a world too long abandoned to darkness. Purification meaning what, precisely? Temari called out, her analytical mind identifying the critical ambiguity in the entity's statement. Consumption and transformation. Xerxes replied without hesitation. This realm has developed imperfections during our absence. Chaotic elements that require restructuring. The process begins with establishing vessels, humans who willingly accept our essence, and expands outward until proper harmonic balance is restored. By harmonic balance you mean total dominance of light over shadow? Naruto challenged, drawing directly on Ashborn's knowledge. Elimination of the natural darkness necessary for true balance. Xerxes' gleaming face shifted in what might have been a smile on a human countenance. Ashborn has taught you well, little successor. Indeed, what you call balance we recognize as corruption. True harmony requires predominance of light, the original state, the absolute being intended before the Shadow Monarch's interference. The philosophical justification masked what Ashborn had explained was essentially cosmic imperialism. The ruler's belief that their interpretation of the absolute being's intention justified eliminating all counterbalancing forces. Enough discussion. Tsunade interrupted, her patience for cosmic philosophy clearly limited. You are warned once. Depart from this realm peacefully or face the combined might of Konoha's forces. The threat might have seemed presumptuous against a cosmic entity, but Tsunade clearly understood her role as Hokage required presenting a unified front regardless of the power disparity. Xerxes regarded her with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Fascinating. Your kind has always displayed remarkable courage disproportionate to your actual capacity. Admirable, if ultimately futile. With a casual gesture from the luminous being, the ground beneath Tsunade and Jiraiya erupted in pillars of blinding light. Though both Sannin dodged with impressive speed, the edge of the attack caught Jiraiya's left arm, instantly crystallizing the skin and causing him to cry out in pain. Conventional attacks will prove ineffective, Gaara stated calmly, sand already swirling protectively around the group. Shikaka suggests that only darkness can counteract its light-based techniques. The sand bearer is correct, Ashborn confirmed. Xerxes cannot be defeated through normal shinobi arts. His essence exists partially beyond physical limitations. Only shadow techniques that operate on the same cosmic principle can directly counter his manifestation. This assessment placed Naruto in the unavoidable position of primary combatant. Regardless of village command structure or tactical formations, he alone possessed the specific abilities needed to counter this threat. Fall back to secondary positions, Naruto ordered, his tone leaving no room for debate. My shadow soldiers and I will engage directly. Gaara, provide defensive support with your sand. Everyone else maintain distance. Conventional techniques will only risk crystallization like Jiraiya's arm. The direct command from a genin would normally have been ignored or countermanded immediately. But the situation's unprecedented nature, combined with Naruto's obvious connection to forces beyond their understanding, caused even Tsunade to hesitate before objecting. "You can't face this entity alone," she argued, though her tone indicated she recognized the tactical logic in his approach. "He won't be alone," Temari stated firmly, stepping forward with her fan already unfurled. "Wind techniques can disperse light concentration, creating openings for shadow to strike, and sand can temporarily obscure its vision," Gaara added, moving to stand beside Naruto, "creating opportunities for more effective shadow deployment." The spontaneous formation of this specialized tactical unit, shadow, wind, and sand working in concert, reflected a natural synergy that transcended conventional shinobi team structures. It also represented a diplomatic merger, with Konoha and Sand Shinobi uniting against a common threat beyond village politics. Tsunade recognized both the tactical wisdom and the political reality of the situation. "Approved," she conceded. "The rest of us will establish a containment perimeter and prevent any expansion of the manifestation beyond this immediate area." With roles established, Naruto stepped forward to directly confront Zerixus, his 4 shadow soldiers moving in perfect formation around him. As he approached, he drew more deeply on Ashborn's power than ever before, darkness gathering around him in swirling patterns that absorbed and nullified the ambient light radiating from the luminous beings. "Shadow Domain," he invoked, expanding the technique he had used against Danzo to encompass the temple area. Within this domain, natural laws bent toward Shadow's dominance rather than light's, creating a battlefield where Zerixus's advantages were at least partially neutralized. The luminous beings glowed dim noticeably, and its movements became slightly more constrained, as if the domain imposed physical limitations on its manifestation. "Ashborn's techniques, wielded by a human vessel," Zerixus observed, genuine interest in its harmonized voice. "Unprecedented. Perhaps you merit direct consumption rather than mere elimination." "You'll find I'm not easily consumed," Naruto replied coldly, shadows coalescing around his hands into blade-like extensions. Shadow blades. The technique was new, emerging spontaneously from his deepening connection to Ashborn, blades of concentrated darkness that could theoretically cut through light-based entities by absorbing their essence rather than merely damaging physical form. As Naruto engaged Zerixus directly, Temari and Gaara coordinated their support perfectly. Wind scythes dispersed the luminous being's concentrated light attacks, while sand clouds temporarily obscured its vision, creating openings for Naruto's shadow techniques to strike more effectively. The shadow soldiers proved particularly effective, their unnatural nature making them resistant to the crystallization effect that had damaged Jiraiya. They attacked from multiple angles simultaneously, forcing Zerixus to divide its attention and defensive capabilities. For a brief period, this coordinated assault seemed to be containing the cosmic entity. Zerixus's manifestation flickered occasionally, suggesting its connection to the physical realm wasn't yet completely stabilized. Then, with a surge of brilliant energy that temporarily overwhelmed even Naruto's shadow domain, Zerixus expanded its presence dramatically. The 2 lesser luminous figures melted into its form, their essence absorbed to strengthen the primary manifestation. "Enough preliminary assessment," the entity declared, its voice now layered with even more painful harmonics. "Your resistance exceeds expectations, successor. A more direct approach is warranted." With blinding speed, Zerixus launched toward Naruto, bypassing the shadow soldiers entirely. Before anyone could react, it drove a spear-like appendage of pure light directly into Naruto's chest, not damaging the physical body, but penetrating into what appeared to be his spiritual essence. "Direct corruption extraction," Zerixus announced with clinical detachment. "Separation of shadow essence from human vessel." Naruto's body convulsed as something fundamental was attacked at a level beyond physical. He could feel Ashborn's connection to him being forcibly severed, the entity itself recoiling in pain as Zerixus's light infiltrated their bond. "Resist!" Ashborn commanded desperately. "He attempts to sever our connection before full ascension is complete. Without it anchored properly, you will die and I will be banished back to the void between realms." The severity of the situation became immediately apparent. This wasn't merely an attack on Naruto as an individual, but an attempt to completely undo his status as successor before it could be fully established. If successful, both he and Ashborn would be destroyed or banished, leaving Zerixus unopposed in this realm. As excruciating pain radiated through every cell in his body, Naruto faced a crucial decision. Thus far, he had been drawing on Ashborn's power while maintaining some separation, using its abilities while remaining essentially Naruto Uzumaki. Now, to survive this direct spiritual attack, deeper integration might be necessary. There is only one way, Ashborn confirmed, sensing his thoughts. Partial ascension, accepting more of my essence than you have thus far. It risks accelerating changes to your nature, but without it, Zerixus will succeed in severing our bond. What changes? Naruto managed to ask internally, even as Zerixus's light burned through his spiritual pathways. Greater detachment from human concerns. Expanded perception beyond conventional limitations. And potentially, reduced emotional connection to those not directly bound to your sovereign authority. The warning was significant, essentially cautioning that further integration would accelerate Naruto's transformation into something less human and more cosmic in nature. The very aspects Temari had warned might isolate him from human connection, but the alternative was immediate defeat and likely death. Do it, Naruto decided, embracing the necessity despite the risks. In that moment of acceptance, something fundamental shifted within him. Where before Ashborn's power had flowed into him as an external force, now it merged more directly with his essence. Darkness and light within him reconfigured, the boundary between Naruto Uzumaki and the Shadow Monarch becoming less distinct. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zerixus's light spear was repulsed by a sudden explosion of shadow energy that emanated directly from Naruto's core rather than being channeled from elsewhere. The luminous being recoiled, genuine surprise evident in its body language. Impossible, it stated, harmonics faltering momentarily. Partial ascension cannot be achieved without the complete armament ritual. Ashborn has broken cosmic law. Naruto rose slowly, his appearance subtly altered. Shadow energy now flowed through his chakra network visibly, darkening the pathways beneath his skin. His eyes had shifted from their normal blue to a deep purple with faint luminescence, and darkness gathered around him in patterns that seemed almost alive. Shadow Monarch's law supersedes your outdated understanding, Naruto replied, his voice layered with subtle harmonic undertones that mirrored but opposed Zerixus's own speech patterns. As successor, I reject your authority in this realm. The formal declaration carried weight beyond mere words. It was a cosmic assertion of jurisdiction, rejecting Zerixus's right to manifest fully in this world. The temple structure actually trembled in response, the connection between realms momentarily destabilizing. Naruto extended his hand toward the luminous being, shadows gathering in concentrated form. Shadow binding. The technique manifested differently than previous bindings, targeting not just physical form but the metaphysical connection between Zerixus and the physical realm. Darkness enveloped the luminous being, not merely restraining but actively compressing its manifestation, forcing its essence back toward its original dimension. This isn't finished, successor, Zerixus declared, its form beginning to destabilize under the pressure of Naruto's technique. Others will come. The purification cannot be stopped merely by delaying the first incursion. Let them come, Naruto responded coldly. Each intrusion will be met with increasing resistance. This realm stands under Shadow Monarch's protection now. With a final surge of concentrated shadow energy, Naruto completed the binding technique. Zerixus's physical manifestation collapsed inward, compressed to a pinpoint of brilliant light that winked out of existence with a sound like shattering glass. The temple structure followed immediately after, crumbling into dust that itself dissolved into nothingness, leaving only scorched earth where it had stood. As the immediate threat faded, the consequences of Naruto's partial ascension became apparent. He remained standing but visibly transformed, the shadow energy flowing through his system now a permanent feature rather than a temporary manifestation. Moreover, his perceptual awareness had expanded dramatically, allowing him to sense chakra patterns and dimensional fluctuations far beyond normal human capacity. Most concerning, however, was the emotional detachment he now felt, a subtle but significant distance between himself and the human concerns that had previously defined him. He could recognize intellectually the importance of protecting Konoha and his precious people, but the emotional urgency behind those connections had muted considerably. Temari approached cautiously, her analytical mind quickly assessing the changes in his appearance and demeanor. Naruto? Are you still yourself? The question cut through the detachment, creating a spark of genuine emotional response that surprised him with its intensity. Whatever transformation the partial ascension had initiated, his connection to Temari remained distinctly personal rather than abstractly sovereign. Mostly, he answered honestly. But changed. The partial ascension was necessary to counter Zerixus, but it's accelerated certain developments that would have happened more gradually otherwise. Tsunade and the others approached with similar caution, their expressions revealing varying degrees of concern and uncertainty. The Hokage, ever the medical specialist, studied him with clinical attention. "Your chakra network has been fundamentally altered," she observed. "The shadow energy isn't merely flowing through existing pathways anymore, it's restructured them entirely, a necessary adaptation," Naruto explained, his voice still carrying subtle harmonic undertones. "Conventional chakra systems cannot fully channel Shadow Monarch authority. This restructuring allows for more direct manifestation of those powers. And the cost?" Jiraiya asked pointedly, cradling his crystallized arm. "What have you sacrificed for this adaptation?" The directness of the question penetrated some of Naruto's new emotional detachment. "Some of my humanity," he admitted quietly. "The integration pushes me further toward cosmic perspective and away from purely human concerns." The admission created visible alarm among the Konoha shinobi, who had known Naruto primarily for his deeply human qualities, his empathy, his determination to protect others, his unwavering loyalty to friends. The possibility that these defining characteristics might be diminishing represented a loss more significant than any physical transformation. "Can it be reversed?" Tsunade asked, her medical instincts seeking treatment options. "No," Naruto replied simply. "The partial ascension is irreversible. But it is incomplete. I remain primarily human, merely with expanded awareness and capacity. For now," Ashborn added internally, its voice now more integrated with Naruto's own thoughts. "Complete ascension still awaits, though this crisis has accelerated the timeline significantly." As they surveyed the scorched earth where the temple had stood, Gaara approached Naruto with the unique understanding of one who had also been transformed by forces beyond human comprehension. "The One Tail confirms what has happened," the red-haired Jinchuriki stated. "You have partially transcended human limitations. But unlike my transformation through Shikaku, yours appears controlled rather than chaotic." "Control is relative," Naruto replied with unexpected philosophical detachment. "Ashborn and I are integrating more directly now. Our perspectives merge increasingly with each manifestation of power." "And what is his perspective on humanity?" Temari asked, cutting directly to the central concern. "Does he value what makes you Naruto Uzumaki, or merely the power you can channel as his successor?" The question was precisely targeted to penetrate the emotional detachment clouding Naruto's human connections. It forced him to examine not just Ashborn's cosmic purpose but his attitude toward the individual consciousness he was gradually merging with. "A fair question," Ashborn acknowledged internally. "Unlike the rulers who see humans merely as vessels to be consumed, I chose you specifically for qualities beyond mere power capacity. Your resilience, your capacity for forgiveness despite suffering, your ability to transform enemies into allies. These human qualities complement sovereign power rather than contradict it." The response reassured Naruto somewhat. Whatever transformations lay ahead, Ashborn valued his essential nature rather than seeking to erase it entirely. "He values the qualities that make me who I am," Naruto answered Temari finally. "Though he sees them through a cosmic rather than human perspective." As they prepared to return to Konoha, Naruto became aware of a subtle change in how the others positioned themselves around him, no longer treating him quite as a fellow shinobi but as something different, something requiring both respect and caution. Only Temari and Gaara seemed comfortable maintaining their previous proximity, perhaps because they had already accepted his dual nature before this latest transformation. "The council will have questions," Tsunade noted as they began their journey back. "Many questions, yes," Naruto acknowledged. "About Zerixus, about the rulers, about the partial ascension and its implications, about whether you remain a Konoha shinobi at all," Tsunade clarified bluntly. "Or whether you've become something our governance structure cannot accommodate." The question would have troubled the previous Naruto deeply. Now, he found himself considering it with analytical detachment rather than emotional investment. "I remain loyal to Konoha's well-being," he stated carefully. "But my role transcends traditional shinobi categories now. The confrontation with Zerixus demonstrates why conventional village structures aren't designed to address cosmic-scale threats." "And you are?" Jiraiya challenged, skepticism evident despite his obvious pain from the crystallized arm. "Not yet," Naruto admitted. "But I'm becoming what's needed to stand against the rulers should they attempt further incursions. No one else in this realm currently can." The simple truth of this statement was difficult to dispute given what they had just witnessed. Conventional shinobi techniques had proven largely ineffective against Zerixus. Only Naruto's shadow abilities, enhanced through partial ascension, had managed to repel the cosmic entity. "You mentioned vessels," Kakashi spoke up, his analytical mind always focusing on practical threats. "Humans who allow these rulers to manifest through them. How are they chosen or identified? They're called fragments of brilliant light in their original form, Naruto explained, drawing on Ashborn's knowledge. Each requires a human with specific spiritual resonance. Ashborn believes several potential vessels already exist in our world, humans with the right resonance pattern to serve as anchors for these entities. Can you identify them? Tsunade asked immediately, her strategic mind already calculating defensive measures. Not easily, Naruto admitted. But Ashborn has knowledge of who they might be. The patterns tend to repeat through history, the same soul types reincarnating with the capacity to serve as vessels. And there are how many potential vessels? Jiraiya pressed. 8 in total, Naruto replied. Including myself, though I've obviously chosen a different path by accepting Ashborn instead. The others would serve as vessels for the remaining rulers if they can be located and convinced to accept the brilliant light. Do you know who the other 7 are? Tsunade demanded. Not specifically, Naruto answered. But we'll need to identify them quickly. Finding these potential vessels before the rulers do is critical. They'll be primary targets for the next incursion attempts. As they passed through Konoha's gates, Naruto sensed a subtle shift in the village's shadow patterns, a ripple of response to his transformed state, as if the very darkness recognized the partial ascension of the Shadow Monarch's successor. It was a reminder of how fundamentally his perception had altered, seeing aspects of reality invisible to conventional awareness. We need to prepare, he stated with quiet certainty. Xerxes was merely the first. Others will follow, seeking vessels among those with compatible spiritual resonance. And beyond the rulers there are other threats, the monarchs that also betrayed Ashborn. What monarchs? Tsunade asked sharply. You haven't mentioned these before, because Ashborn believed they remained dormant, Naruto explained. But Xerxes' manifestation suggests coordination beyond what was expected. The other monarchs, Quaratia, Rakan, Silid, and Antares, may be stirring as well. More cosmic entities? Jiraiya groaned. Just what we needed, different from the rulers, Naruto clarified. The monarchs possess organic form and can manifest directly in our world without vessels. They're fewer but individually more powerful, especially Antares, the monarch of destruction. The information created visible concern among the senior shinobi. What had begun as an unusual development in Naruto's abilities had rapidly escalated into awareness of a cosmic-scale conflict with their world caught in the middle. Ancient entities seeking entry through human vessels, opposed by a partially ascended successor to the Shadow Monarch. We'll need to brief the other Kage, Tsunade decided. This transcends village politics. If cosmic entities are targeting our world, a united response is essential. Agreed, Naruto responded, surprising himself with how naturally he now participated in strategic decisions that would have been far above his station just days earlier. And we need to begin searching for the other potential vessels. If we can identify them before the rulers make contact, we might prevent further incursions like Xerxes'. As they approached the Hokage Tower, Naruto's thoughts turned to the transformation he had undergone, not just the physical changes or expanded perceptions, but the subtle drift toward cosmic perspective and away from purely human concerns. He recalled Temari's warning about isolation from human connection and recognized its relevance now more than ever. The path of the Shadow Monarch had always been walked alone. Ashborn had existed in essential isolation for millennia, a cosmic entity operating beyond normal relationships. But Naruto was determined to forge a different approach, one that maintained human connections even as his nature evolved towards something beyond conventional humanity. Looking at Temari walking beside him, still treating him as Naruto despite the shadow energy now visibly flowing through his chakra network, he found renewed determination. Whatever cosmic responsibilities awaited, whatever further transformations the full ascension might bring, he would not surrender the connections that defined him. We need allies in this fight, he stated suddenly, surprising the others with the shift in topic. Not just shinobi villages, but those who might understand the nature of what we face. The tailed beasts contain ancestral knowledge of these entities, Gaara observed. Perhaps the other jinchuriki could provide insights, and the potential vessels themselves, Naruto added. If we can find them before the rulers do, they could become assets rather than threats, especially if they choose to resist rather than accept possession. As they entered the Hokage Tower to face the inevitable questions about what had transpired, Naruto felt something unexpected beneath the emotional detachment of partial ascension, a sense of purpose clearer than anything he had experienced before. Not merely to become the Shadow Monarch's successor or to protect Konoha, but to stand as a unique bridge between cosmic forces and human concerns. He had always sought acknowledgement from others. Now, paradoxically, as he became something increasingly apart from conventional humanity, that goal transformed into ensuring that cosmic entities acknowledged humanity's value rather than seeing them merely as vessels or obstacles. It was a path no one had walked before, not fully human, not fully cosmic, but something deliberately balanced between the two. A true successor to Ashborn, not merely in power but in purpose, creating a new approach to cosmic authority that remained grounded in human connection. As the council awaited their report on the confrontation with Xerxes, Naruto stood at the threshold of this unprecedented journey, partially ascended, fundamentally altered, but determined to forge a path that honored both his human origins and his cosmic destiny. And somewhere beyond conventional perception, the remaining rulers and monarchs sensed the shift in balance. The emergence of a successor who might challenge assumptions that had stood since the death of the absolute being. The eternal conflict between light and shadow, order and chaos, entered a new phase with Naruto Uzumaki at its center, no longer merely a Konoha shinobi with unusual abilities, but the partially ascended successor to the Shadow Monarch, walking a path between worlds.